Hey, hi everyone. So in the last recording, we were discussing about different types of input tags, what we have in our HTML forms over there, right? So in this recording, we'll be covering the left out different types of input tags, what we have in HTML forms. But before that, let's have a quick revise on the things what we covered in the previous recording. So we discussed about a form where we have a tag called as a form in HTML with the help of which we can just go and create a forms in our HTML as well. And we do have a tag called as label with the help of which we can just have a label for our input. And in order to bind that label for our input, we do have two specific attributes called as for and id, with the help of which we can directly bind this label for this particular input over there. Similarly, we discussed about different types of input tags where we discussed the type as a text where it will accept a alphanumerical number. It can be alphabets or it can be numbers or it can be special characters whatsoever. It can be accepted when we define the type as a text over there. Similarly, we define type as something called number where we are only expected to enter number for this particular input over there. Similarly, we discussed the type as email so that it will just get the email kind of formats over there. So on, we also discussed about type as date where we'll be getting our local time with respect to our time zones over there. And we discussed about a type as password where password simply indicates we will be masking the values which is going to be entered in this particular password so that it won't be directly viewed on the screen over there. Similarly, we discussed about type as radio button where the type as radio simply means we are expected to select any one out of the multiple choice options over there. And we also got, we need to group all these particular input tags with the help of an attribute called name, where we can directly write some common value among all these three input tags and we can just group them together so that it works as expected for our radio functionality. In a similar way, we discussed about some more add-on attributes over here. The one was min length, which simply means the minimum number of characters for this input field would be 5 characters or 5 alphabets over there. And we also discussed about maximum threshold value, which is nothing else than max length attribute, where we are stating 12 as the max length value, indicating 12 is the maximum number of characters what could be entered for this particular label. We also made it as required in the sense it's a mandatory field, so we can't go and skip this particular input over there. So this is a mandatory field what our clients or the end users need to fill at that time of the submission of the form over there. So on, we also discussed about value as rk, indicating this value attribute is nothing but by default I want the value as rk on the screen over there. We also discussed about one more attribute where we have disabled, which simply means that this input is no longer under consideration, it's been disabled. So let's go and have a quick review on the output as well. So this is how our output is looking. See, when I hover on the first one, that's nothing but the first name field, we are getting a please fill out this field. Similarly, the middle name by default we're having the value as rk, whereas last name it's being disabled. And for number, we can see we're getting the numbers option over here. For email, we have the email functionality. For date, it's right now in mmdd YYY format. And when I write some password, it's always in a masked way. Similarly, we can see we have our radio button and we are able to select any one out of the multiple option. By default, we are selecting medium with the help of an attribute called as checked over here. So now let's just go and cover the remaining kind of input tags what we have in our HTML forms. Let's write some break over here. Let's have 2 lines of break. And then we discussed about the shirt size with the help of our radio button, right? Now let's say I want to discuss about the input as type color over there. For that, let's say we can ask our clients which specific color they want for their shirt or the any sort of things over here. Okay, for that, let's just say a label, and for value called for value, we can just say it as color CLR, or you can write anything of your choice. Let's state please select the color for your shirt. Okay, so for this, let's just go and we will define an input tag over here. Let's say input, and this time the type would be color over here. It would be color. And now if I just go back to my output over here, let's just go back to our output. And if we can see, we just got a new field over here stating please select your shirt. Please select the color for your shirt. And now we can see by default it's blank. So now we can just go and hit on this particular one and we can just select any color of our choice. Okay. With the help of this cursor pointer, we can select any color of our choice. Now we can just adjust it over here as well. So on, we can even adjust with the help of our RGB color combination. That's nothing but red, green and blue. So we can just go and write some numbers over here and we can get its expected color on the screen as well. Okay, so that's how we can just go and select any sort of color over here. Let's say I want to get with red, and now the red color just got selected over here. Similarly, let's go and discuss about other different types of input as well. So the way we covered about our type as color, in a similar way, let's say I want to go and discuss about a drop down option. At some point of time in different forms, we do see a drop down option, right? Where we'll be having a drop down icon. The moment we hit on that particular drop down icon, we can select any number of outcomes within that particular drop down, right? How is it possible? So for that, we do have a tag called as select tag, with the help of which we can create a drop down and we can just go and opt for any value within that particular drop down. So before that, let's have line break over here in order to make our UI looks quite good. So now let's just say label. I want to have a label, and let's say we'll go with the payment option. Okay, so whatever shirt our clients are selecting here for whatever color, I want to make sure the clients pay for this particular one. Okay, how is it possible? So for that, I will just say we'll have a payment option over here. So let's say payment options. Okay, I'll just go with the payment option over here. So now let's just say please select a payment method. Okay, so let's just go with this particular one, and now in order to create this drop down, we are not going with the input tag, rather we do have a tag called as select over here. We do have a tag called as select over here. So let's just say select, and you can write a name for this particular one. So in order to group the way how we add name attributes here, I will just say payment over here, or we can even skip. It's totally an optional field. Whereas for ID, you need to maintain the same thing what we have defined for our for attribute in the label tag, because we are binding this label for this specific select tag over here. So let's have our ID, and then now if I just go back to my output over here, so we can see we got a drop down icon here, right? We guys got a drop down option, but we are not having any options within this particular drop down here, correct? Why is it so? Because we haven't defined the different types of payment methods within our select option over here. So how is it possible? For that, we do have a tag called as option over here. Okay, for that we do have a tag called as option, and we can see by default I'm getting an attribute called value, indicating what is the value for this particular one which we are showing over here. Let's say I want to go with some payment options. The very first one I would like to go with the Google Pay. Similarly, I want to have some more options over here. So let's just say I want to have one more option. Let's just say this time it would be Phone Pay. Similarly, I want to have few more things. You can have as many number of options you wish. There is no restrictions over here for that. Let's say I want to go with the UPI icon as well, Beam UPI. So I will just go with UPI and so on. Let's say I want to have one more thing. Let's call it as cash on delivery. So I'll just say COD. Let's say cash on delivery. Okay, similarly, I can just define the values here as well. Let's say GPay and Phone Pay for this particular one. So now if I just say my output, and now if I guys just go back to our output, so we can see we got a select payment method input over here, and we have a drop down out of which we can just go and select anything of our choice here, correct? We can select any one of our choice over here. But when we have a default load option, okay, when we get a default thing or default form on our browser, by default it's getting Google Pay selected over here, right? How can we override that? For that, you can just go and say one more option over here. Let's say I want to have one more option tag and just keep the value and even the content as blank over here. And now if I just go back to my output, we can see by default we don't have anything, but the clients can just go and select anything of their choice over here. So that's how we can just go and create a drop down with the help of a select tag in our HTML over here. So now let's discuss about the next input tag what we have over here. So for that, let's just go. I'll have a 2 lines of break again, and then let's say I want to have a label here, and this time let's assume we want to get or collect the feedback from the clients over here. For that, let's say I want to have a field label called as please provide your valuable feedback. Okay, let's have the valuable feedback over here. So for that, let me just go ahead and create an input tag over here. So let's just say inputs over here. And then if I just say test text, let's keep it as default as of now. I'm not defining for and ID. We'll come back to that. And if we just go back to our output over here, see, we just got a feedback field, but let's say our clients are entering some good amount of feedback, in the sense they have a lengthy feedback over here. Let's write some default contents. And then if we can see over here, I am not able to see all in a single go, right? I need to scroll either towards left or right in order to see the entire flow over here. This is not ideally a standard way or a good practice, correct? Then how do we handle or dealt such kind of issues? In order to overcome this thing, rather than going with the input as a tag over there, we do have a tag called as text area in our HTML. We do have a tag called as text area in our HTML. So where we can just go and define our name and ID again. So let's say name it as something called comment CMT, and for I just go with some value. Let's say comments over here again. So I will just say CMTS, a shorthand abbreviation. So let's say CMTS, the same value what I'm maintaining for and ID in case of our label and text area. The way how we add for and ID for our label and input, in a similar way we do have it for our label as well as select. In a similar way we do have it for label as well as text area. It's a default one. Okay, we don't have ID here, my bad. Let's write that particular one again. So let's say ID as CLR, correct? So we can see it's available for all the three different types of combinations over here. That's nothing but label input, label select, and label text area over here. So now we just defined our text area where we have name as comment and ID as the comments over here. And then if I just go back to my output over here, see, we just got a good amount of feedback box, right? The window right now, or the input box, is quite good only. At the same point of time, if we see on the right hand side, we can either expand it on both the ways. It's nothing but in a horizontal way, or we can either expand it in a vertical way as well, or we can do it in both in a parallel side by side as well. Okay, but by default when you just load your application, we'll be having this particular size over there. Again, can we override by default the size as well? Yes, that's nothing but by default when our application gets loaded, I want some good amount of space on our window as well. How is it possible? So for that we do have two attributes in text area called as rows and columns. So let's say rows, I want somewhere around 18 rows. It's just a random number. And then if we just go ahead, see, by default I'm getting 18 rows. It does not mean I can't override. No, we can still override, but when you just reload, it will be always having 18 rows on the screen. At the same point of time, we can even adjust our columns as well. So for that we do have an attribute called as cols, indicating columns. Let's say I want to have 25 columns right now over here. So now if I just come back, see, we just got 25 here. Let's expand it. Let's make it as 125 in order to see the changes on the screen here. So let's go with 125, and here we go. At the same point of time, again, we can still override. Okay, we can still override. 125 is not looking quite good. Let's make it as 100. Oh, 105. Okay, whatsoever. This looks pretty good, and the way how we expected over here. At the same thing, we have one more thing called as a placeholder over here. So if we can see for this first name, or for this age, or for this email, or for this password, or for this text area as well, we are having a blank space here, right, for this particular input boxes. We can utilize those things in a much better way as well. How is that possible? For that we do have an attribute called as placeholder over here. See, we do have an attribute called as placeholder, and you can write some description for that particular input field over here. So let's say please enter first name. I'll just say placeholder, and I just give it as please enter first name. So let's go back to our output, and if we can see in this input box for the first name, we started getting please enter first name. Similarly, you can do for all the other input tags as well, even for your text area as well. Okay, so we can just go ahead again, and I can just come back over here. Let's say placeholder, and then let's just say please enter your comments here. And then if we just go back to output in order to see our changes, and we can see we started getting please enter your comments here. So the moment I start writing something, you can see that placeholder is getting vanished. Okay, it's getting disabled. The moment we don't have anything, that's nothing but blank, we'll get that placeholder over here. Again, this is one of the interesting thing where we can utilize our space in a much good way, right? So our clients are much clear and even educated for this particular input box right now. So in a similar way, we do have about different types of buttons in HTML which could be achieved with the type of a tag called as input as well. So how is it possible? For that, let's say I want to have a break over here. Let's have 2 lines of break, and I'll just reduce the number of rows so that I can see everything on the same screen. Let's make it as 14, and then let's go ahead here. I will just say we want to have a reset button over here. So let's say input, and then let's say I don't want anything this over here. Let's change the type as reset over here. Let's change the type as reset over here. And then if I just go back to my output over here, so we can see we started getting a button called as reset over here, right? What's the use of this button called reset? So let's go and write some values over here. So I'm writing some values over here, same over here for age as well, and same here for some email. Let's say I'm selecting some date or whatsoever stuff, and let's write some comments. And the moment I hit on reset over here, okay, the moment I hit on reset, this entire form will be cleared out, in the sense the what all values we have entered for all these input tags will be refreshed. So let's click on reset, and we can see all the values just got vanished accordingly. So that's the beauty of having a button called as reset. How is it possible? With the help of input tag only again, but we are just going and defining the type as reset over here. Also, we do have one more type called as input, where we have the type as submit over here, which would be used in order to submit our forms over here. So let's go back. Now I just defined the input as type submit over here. Let's come back over here, and if we can see, I started getting input as type submit over here, right? We started getting input as type submit over here. So we can just go and hit on this particular submit as well. So if I just go and hit on this submit over here, we'll be getting our outcomes accordingly. So let's go and click on submit over here, and if you can see, we started getting please fill out this field for first name, indicating it's a mandatory one, right? So let's go and write it out. Okay, so let's say I'm writing 3, but again we can see we're getting one more suggestion. Please lengthen this text to 5 characters or more, correct? Okay, let's make it more than 5, and then now let's just go and click on submit over here. So what's happening, if we can see on the top URL, the URL is getting changed over here, right? Where we're getting shirt sizes on and payment over here and some other junk values, right? How are we getting this particular one? What exactly is happening? The moment we hit on this form submit over here, we don't have any actions defined for this form here, right? So if we can see, we don't have any action defined over here. That's nothing but we haven't defined any sort of JavaScript functionality as of now. That's the reason it's just going and appending all the values what we have for that particular form on the UI level over there. Okay, so let's just fill some blank values right now. I'll just refresh it once again in order to go and discuss about different types of tags. But before that, let's just write some random value over here, and then I will just keep it as a submit over here, indicating I'm submitting the form. And we can see we're getting some dummy or some junk values here, right? Indicating what is the shirt size, and for payment, and we have something for comment as well, correct? Because we're having a value attribute over there. For time being, I'll do one thing. So I will just remove that particular checked over here for the radio buttons. I don't want to have this one as selected over here, and similarly I don't want to have the value called as name for text area, because I'm getting the same thing on the comment over there, and the other one was for your payment, right? So let's remove this particular one as well. Okay, so let's remove, not this, my bad, let's remove the name over here. Okay, so now if I just go back, and then let's just say, let's refresh our application once again over here. Let's quickly refresh, and then let's try to submit over here. So let's click on submit, and it's stating okay, we need to fill. Let's fill something, and then let's go all the way towards bottom. Let's click on submit here, and then we can see nothing is getting happening. Okay, it's just refreshing the same page over there, correct? It's just refreshing the same page over there. So at the same point of time, why is it refreshing over there? We understood, okay, it's because like we don't have any action defined for a form. That's nothing but a JavaScript functionality. It is not mandatory all the time you need a JavaScript functionality, but when it comes to processing or validating, yes, we need JavaScript. But now let's say when I click on submit, I want to redirect to any one of this particular page over here. Okay, let's say I want to redirect to any one of this particular page here. So for that, what I'll be doing right now, I will just go and click on this particular any one of the HTML tag over here. Okay, let's say I want to get something called images. Okay, so when I click on submit, I want images.html. So I will just say I will open images.html over here. So let's give the action as the images.html, which is present in the same folder called web development, where I have my current file called as forms.html as well. Okay, so now let's just go back, and then I will just say I want to refresh this page over here. Let's refresh it once again, and then let's say I want to write some random number here, and then let's say I want to click on submit here. Let's submit, and then we can see on click of submit, I am getting redirected to a page called as images.html, and we are getting the images screen over here, correct? That's nothing but when I just go and click on submit over here, it's navigating to another page called as images.html. So that's how we can switch from one particular page to another page with the help of the action value as well. It's not mandatory all the time we need to have the action as HTML. We can even have a JavaScript functionalities as well. So we'll be discussing about JS the moment we enter into JavaScript recordings, but right now let's keep it as blank. We'll discuss about different types of things what we have over here. Okay, the one lost input tag what we're missing right now, the way how we add our radio button, right? In a similar way we can have our checkbox as well. Okay, so for that let's do one thing. I'll copy the same thing whatever we have here. Let's write some breaks over here. Let's write 2 lines of breaks again, and let's paste that entire code. Okay, so rather than saying enter your shirt size here, let's say enter your shirt. Let's say, okay, I can go with what we can add here, enter, or let's say select your courses. Okay, let's just say select the known languages. Okay, select the known languages. Okay, so I'll just go with the different types of languages over here. So let's say for this one I would like to go with English firstly. Okay, second one would be about your Kannada over here. Third one would be about your Hindi over here, and so on. We can have different types of language as well. So let's say I want to have one more time. So let's copy, let's paste it over here. Let's say Telugu. Okay, so I will just update everything. So I just say whatever we have here, I want to have the same thing for others as well. So the name I will just replace it here. So the way how we are grouping all these radio buttons in a similar way, I will remove the shirt size at the name over here, and I'll write something called language. Okay, let's say the same thing for all other input as well, indicating I need to group them, right? The way how we grouped in radio, in a similar way I'm grouping for my checkbox as well. So this is not a radio button, this is a checkbox. So for that I will just go with a value called as type as checkbox, indicating you can select any number of outcomes over here. So let's update every way from radio to checkbox over here, and let's just have the for ID as well. So let's say this label is for English over here, correct? So let's say this label is for English over here. So let's have the ID as English. Similarly, second label is for our Kannada over here. So this label is, okay, so this label is for Kannada over here. So on we have Hindi over here. Okay, my bad, Hindi. So let's have over Hindi accordingly. And this label is for Hindi. Last but not the least, we have Telugu over here. So let's update that as well. Okay, so now if I just save my outcome, and if we just go back to outputs over here, so let's just go back. We are not in the forms, I mean images right now, we are in the forms tag. So let's go back, and if we can see, we got our checkbox over here, right? So in case of radio buttons, we got a circle like structure, whereas in case of checkbox, we have a squares over here. So where we can select any number of outcomes with the help of this particular checkbox here. Okay, the main functionality of checkbox is nothing but you can select any number of outcomes with the help of this checkbox over here. Whereas in case of radio buttons, you are able to select any one, whereas in case of checkbox, you can select any number of outcome. The way how we add something called checked as an attribute, the by default attribute in a radio button, in a similar way, you can also select some default options in your checkbox as well. How is it possible? So let's say by default, I want to have checked for small shirt size over here. In a similar way, I want to check for Kannada as well. Okay, so I can say checked over here, and then if I just go back, we can see by default we have Kannada selected here. It does not mean we can't override, we can still override. Okay, even that's possible. But by default, when we just go and refresh our page, we'll be getting Kannada. Again, can we rate it only for one thing? No. Checkbox, you can have any number of options selected, right? You can write any number of outputs as checked over here. So let's say it is a mandatory one. So then if we just go back and if I just refresh my outcome over here, okay, let's save the file. Okay, my bad, I made a checkbox. Okay, it should be checked. Okay, let's say, and then if I just go back over here, so you can see by default Kannada and Hindi are getting selected here. It does not mean you can override, you can still override. Okay, we can uncheck as well. The way how we can do in our radio button, in a similar way you can do over here as well. Okay, that's how we can just go and use different types of tags and attributes in our forms HTML over here. So let's have a quick revise. So we covered different types of label and input tags. We discussed about the type, where we got to know type is text, number, email, date, radio, checkbox, and even we discussed about select options. Okay, in order to get a drop down, we discussed about text area in order to get a lengthy input window, and we discussed about type as reset and submit, so that we can just go and reset or we can submit our forms accordingly. We even discussed about some add-on attributes called as placeholder, where we can utilize the blank space of the input box. Similarly, we have required indicating it's a mandatory one. Similarly, we have disabled indicating this field is no longer under consideration. We do have value where indicating by default I want the value as RK, and so on and so forth, all this stuff over here. Okay, so that's all about your forms in HTML for this particular recording. Last but okay, one more add-on over here, last but not the thing. Okay, last but not that much important, but yeah, we need to understand how we are going to submit that. Okay, so that's nothing but, let's say I want to go and enter some name here. Let's say I want to enter my name only. Let's say Rohan Kinar. Okay, and now I want to click on submit here. So let's go and click on submit, and we can see we are getting shirt size and all other Vagera stuff, right? By default, shirt size is coming as on, but it's not showing whether I selected small or medium or large, right? So let's get that as well added. Okay, so for that, let's say I want to go, I'll just show it for one instance over here, and then you can do the same thing for other as well. Okay, so let's do it for one instance, and we can just follow the same thing for other things as well. So right now by default we're getting small size here, so I'll just go and add a name over here. Let's add name over here. I'll just keep it as blank so that we'll see what exactly is happening. And then let's refresh. Let's go back. Let's refresh the application. Let's write my name again. So I just go with my complete name. I will click on submit over here. So what's happening again, shirt size is coming as on over here, right? It's not showing any sort of value. Why is it so? Because we are not defining any value what we are assigning for this particular label here, right? So for that, let's just say I will define the value the way how we define value for our select option. See, we have value for each and everything, right? In the same way, you can just say the value over here as well. So let's say small, I will add value for this as well. Let's say this is medium. Okay, I will add a value for this one as well. Let's just say the value as large over here. And then if we just go back, let's refresh once again over here. And now I will start entering some name. Let's say I will click on submit again. And if we can see, the shirt size is equals to small now. It's not showing on, right? In a similar way, you can update for your language as well as for other things as well. Okay, that's nothing but for Kannada and Hindi. What's happening? Again, you just need to go and update your value over here. So let's just come back over here. I will just say value. I will just say this is Kannada. Okay. Similarly, just come back over here. I will just say value. I will just say it as Hindi. I will just say for other two as well. Okay, so that we should not miss the things. Let's say value. I will just say it as English. And let's go over here. And let's say the value as Telugu over here. Okay. And now if we just go back, even those things will be appearing. But before that, yeah, let's do one more thing. Did I miss? Okay, I missed a blanks colon over here. Yeah. So let's go ahead here. Even for the first name, I want to show it on the screen. So it's not dropping up right now. So I will just say we want to have a value for this as well. I'll just keep it as blank. And let's say name over here. And I will just say the name as F name. Okay, indicating first name. So now let's just come back. Let's refresh. And then now if I just go and start filling some value here. Okay, let's fill the value. And if I just click on submit here, so we can see the name. Okay, that's nothing but the first name got added with Rohan here, correct? That was something which I added. Shirt size is small, the thing what we got. And language, you can see we selected Kannada. At the same time, the other language what is checked is Hindi over here, correct? So that's how we can just go and get the values on our URL as well, so that we can process with the help of our JavaScript method what we'll be defining under this action attribute for the forms over here. So that's all about different types of things what we can dealt with our HTML forms over here. Okay, so that's it for this particular recording. So thank you all. Thank you for watching. That's it for this session.